So I guess we sort of touched upon our second dynamic, which is around how the operating environment for businesses are changing. And there's no doubt that the last 12 months or so has been pretty challenging. You've had a global workplace experiment where working from home has come to the fore. Lots of drive towards building operational resilience, companies really then thinking about balance sheet and financial resilience, lots of uncertainty, lots of volatility. And if we look at history, whenever you come out of a global crisis, there's always that uncertainty in the operating environment for some time to come. So, we've got the good news of vaccines and all of that stuff that's starting to roll out, which gives us a light at the end of the tunnel. But I think from a business perspective, we're likely to see a little bit of volatility for some time. And that's challenging. That's challenging from a real estate perspective when traditionally commitments are quite long term. So Amanda, that sort of uncertain business operating environment that we almost become accustomed to over the last 12 months or so, how does that sort of support and drive the flex market?
Well, I think the flex market will support that for companies. It will allow companies to help their employees adapt and change the way they work. Because I don't think, even for myself, I don't know how I would like to work for the next year, whether I want to go back to the office 5 days a week or 4 days a week. I know I definitely want to go back to the office, but who knows? And I think that's what everyone's working through at the moment, and it would give companies the option to give their employees choice. And I think choice is going to be the big ticket item for 2021. Choice of how you work, where you work, who you work with, choice of background, whether you want to work quietly in a phone booth or whether you want to work with your colleagues around a table like that and come up with ideas. So definitely, I think flexible office space can provide that. So it doesn't matter if you are a 5-person company or 500. The vast amount of amenity space you have in a flexible office building would give you those opportunities to have choice.
I mean, of course, choice has been a watchword over recent months, and the outcome of choice is that you get multiple outcomes. So that it's really difficult for businesses to plan both space requirements, where their headcount is, all of those sort of traditional things that are perhaps been a little bit easier to control in the old way of working. I think are up for grabs, and that plays to the flex market. I'm just interested on the flip side. I mean, we've been talking a lot about occupiers and occupiers' requirements and how they're changing. How's the flex market itself, in terms of the operators and the providers, actually adjusting their offer to support that demand and really capture that demand?
Yeah, I think what's helped is over the years there's been so many new entrants into the flexible office market. If we talk about the WeWork boom that's happened over the last few years, that's changed the way people have looked at flexible office space. That's also changed the offering in many different ways. Month-to-month rolling contracts have then become common. And right now, because of the background climate that we're working with, we have things like day passes that are being offered out, amongst all your standard operators. You also have things such as flexible lounge passes. So that gives employers the option to give their staff access to multi-site locations. So if you lived in the West End, you could probably just pop into one of the West End buildings and not have to commute on the tube, which is not desired right now by a lot of staff. And I think operators, and landlords have started getting involved in making sure that they work with their tenants, big or small, to find the right space that's the most suitable to their current needs. And I think that is how it would play out, and how operators would start being central to what their customer wants and offering that.
I think that's that issue around platform and flexibility across a platform, I think, is going to be one of the big trends of 2021. I mean, we tend to get transfixed. We think about flexibility in the context of an asset. Lease flexibility, a single building, encouraging flexibility within the context of a single building. But I think that next evolution is definitely platform. I think it's going to be really exciting to watch that play out. And it will really capture the attention of occupiers that are thinking about agility and all of those issues. I mean, James, from beyond flexibility, clearly the changeable operating environment for business, that uncertainty, that volatility, growth opportunity followed by, perhaps diminishing markets, all of those sort of dynamics playing out every day. How's that changing sort of occupational demand in the conventional market?
Well, other than flex and having breaks, as I've already said, the flight to quality, tenants are definitely looking for good space, great space, new space. But the other big thing coming through now is ESG, very much. Clients of mine 3-4 years ago, Impax, one of the big environmental green investors, really got my eye going on it because they were really looking at the buildings very clearly to see how green they were. And they themselves have really grown over the last few years in terms of assets under management because the shareholders, the investors, they're all wanting, and particularly staff as well, they're pushing the businesses, all want to invest in it. It's really, really good. We're also seeing a lot of collaboration spaces needed. People, less cellularization, more collaboration. And then the other thing that we're seeing is very much training. A lot more people are needing to be upskilled. Staff need to be upskilled with the new tech and artificial intelligence and things like that are coming in. So we are seeing a lot of training. One client, we're acquiring space in the West End for 7,500, and they're actually going to make within it an academy where they're going to have lecture theatres and breakout areas.
I mean, I think those agenda items are really fascinating. I've been talking for some time about the need for businesses to get real with their upskilling and reskilling requirements within their people. You know, ultimately businesses have been fighting a war for talent. It's been extremely expensive, and actually that talent isn't always there. And with some of the technologies that are starting to come in business, such as AI, such as virtual reality, all of these sort of newfangled technologies, I sound incredibly old, but all of those sort of technologies that's coming to bear are really challenging people and existing staff members. So that training and education piece, I think, is going to be the next wave of amenity that we're going to see in office buildings. And I was also struck by your point about ESG, because I think it's really interesting that I think we have seen a real groundswell around the ESG agenda, but particularly from the investor side of life. Interestingly, when I mentioned our Your Space survey earlier, only about half of our survey respondents had less than 10% of their global portfolios in green accredited buildings. Now, if that ESG agenda is really going to move forward from the occupational side, that's going to be a real frontier on which occupiers move forward. And I think as a consequence, we're likely to see those accredited buildings coming up the agenda in terms of searches and options for occupiers. So some really fascinating change in dynamics, I think, going on in the business world, which will shape the real estate decision.
Exactly, Lee. An example of that would be BP. They recently sold their building in St James's, moved their office to Cargo in Canary Wharf, and also worked with the office group to take a 50,000 square foot building to help with the transformation of their business. They weren't exactly sure how to create that space for their employees. So they worked with a provider that knew how to do it and been doing it for a long time to create that business environment that they really wanted. They called it the collaboration factory or something along those lines. To give that space to the employees to thrive in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the transformation that BP are going through in particular, and it's not exclusive to BP, but is a real bellwether for the market, that you're going to see real change in the way that they think about occupancy, they think about their portfolio and its configuration, and they also think about the workplace and what they're trying to achieve from their more formal parts of their workplace. And clearly that plays to both the conventional side of the market, but also to flexible as well.